Steve Jobs was adopted, and this gave him a feeling of being given up, which caused him so much anger. And at age 19, this frustration led him to pay $1,000 for a 12-week Primal Therapy course. After this Primal Therapy, his friends said that it gave him a massive confidence boost, and eventually this led to his famous reality distortion field. Now you're probably wondering, what is this therapy about and why did it give Steve Jobs such a confidence boost? And also, will I be able to turn into some kind of hippie billionaire after doing this as well? After exploring multiple books about Primal Therapy, I'm going to share 5 things that led me to a greater understanding about entrepreneurship, Steve Jobs, and myself. In short, where our really deep human needs come from. If you watch this video until the end, you will have a clearer understanding about your own behavior and phone addiction. So here's the thing, when a baby experiences stress, like Steve Jobs being given away when he was a baby, it gets stored in this primal part of our brain, and we know it also as the reptilian brain or the salamander brain or the turtle brain. Wait a minute, talking about turtles. Right, much better. We're talking about Steve Jobs here, of course. So the first point I want to discuss is the power of reliving something. Arthur Janov came up with this theory of primal therapy when he had a student come over to his therapy session, and the student told him about this experience that he had when he was reenacting something, when he was making a theater play about being a child, and he threw up milk and he was screaming for his mom and his dad, and this changed him a bit. So Arthur Janov asked him if he would be able to reproduce or just to redo this kind of primal screaming as a child. So he started screaming for his mom and his dad, even though it felt a bit weird, and he saw that he was actually changing and reaching something really deep inside of him, some kind of older pain that he didn't process yet. And that's when the student ended with this primal scream, and this led to Arthur Janov's first book, The Primal Scream. And it's really fun when you go on YouTube, you can search for these primal therapy sessions, and they were a really big hype in the 70s. That's also why John Lennon did them and Steve Jobs did them. And you can see all these people just laying on the ground, screaming and kicking and crying for their mom and their dad. And the whole idea is to go back to this really primal part of yourself and re-experience and re-feel the things that you weren't able to process when you were still a kid. And the second thing that I learned is about the primal brain, or the primal pain, as Arthur Janov calls it. And I know that when there are neuroscientists listening to this, they are going to be angry at me because there is no such thing as a primal part of our brain. But it's a really easy to understand concept, and this is also what Arthur Janov calls this salamander brain. So the idea is that when you are young, even when you are only 1 month in the womb, there's this little part of your brain, the brainstem, that we all have in common, even with like dinosaurs and salamanders, that can already store certain stress when stuff is happening with your mom when she's pregnant, or later in life when you're still a baby and you don't have the capacity to handle the stress that's happening. And what is meant by this stress is that anything that goes against the natural pace and the natural rhythm of the child and its needs is being experienced by the child as stress. And you can imagine that the little Steve Jobs, when he was given away, there was a lot of uncertainty and he didn't have this emotional or cognitive capacity to handle any of this. So the only thing that gets imprinted is just this primordial feeling of being unwanted and being having no control over situations, which caused him to be like really obsessive and focused on control in many areas of life. So the third point I want to talk about is the unreal self, this part of ourselves that we disowned. Because as a baby, we don't have this capacity to regulate our emotions on our own. Our nervous system isn't fully grown yet, and that's why we need human touch. Because when we are babies and we are touched by humans, we just hopefully feel safe, and we're very sensitive, so we know that the humans like grown-up humans want to take care of us, and we can sense their energy and like how rigid they move, the type of facial expressions that they have. These are all things that this little salamander part of you also understands. But what's happening when anything goes against this natural flow of the baby's needs, so this need for food and the need for safety and love and the feeling that you exist. You can think of all these needs as a river, and when anything that he wants doesn't happen, or he has to do something faster than he really wants to, you can think of it as building a dam in the river, and then the river has to find a different way. So this is the natural way that the river or the self wants to flow, and then there's just this kind of detour, and he's finding a way to handle his life energy, but he's not being himself anymore. So what I mean by disowned parts of the self is that when you are a child, or maybe even later in life, you have certain needs, and when you notice that when you have this authentic need to want something, to feel something, to do something, but the people around you make you feel like you're not supposed to have this need, and you're not going to be loved if you express this need, then you're just going to disown this part of yourself. So maybe later in life you're not going to be able to express your anger because as a child your parents always told you to shut up. Or maybe the other way around, that you felt unheard and stuff went out of control, so you really feel this deep urge to control everything or to be really angry at stuff and at people. And so this leads me to the fourth point, which is that we are filling these primal needs, we are filling them up with symbols. And this is where it gets really interesting, because what's happening when we have all these suppressed needs, it's making us neurotic, which is not an official term anymore, but it just comes down to having this obsessive or compulsive need to do anything, like many things. Many people also don't know that they are neurotic, but I promise you we all are in some sense. So maybe it shows up as drinking too much, working too little, smoking cigarettes, obsessive about sex, obsessive about knowledge, obsessive about just like having this need to do anything to fill up this kind of emptiness or void inside of you. Imagine that you were breastfed, and many times your mom was already pulling you away before you were fully satisfied. And after doing this many times, you just start craving this, sensation. It could lead to this obsessive need for smoking, because it's still triggering the same kind of sensations. And what I think that Steve Jobs understood really well is that we all have this need to be loved and liked and connected. And you see how this turns into creating a phone that we can always carry around with us, and we can connect to others whenever we want, because deep down we all have this need for feeling that we exist. And this is also what Nir Eyal talks about in his book Hooked, is that anytime you grab your phone, it's because not of an outside distraction, but most of the distraction is inside of your mind. So anytime you grab your phone, it's because it's being triggered by a certain emotion that you have. And this emotion, and just be mindful about this, is what wants you to, grab your phone and look for people online, any feeling that you exist, or any like or any comment, because deep down that's what we're all longing for. But it will never fully satisfy this urge that we have. And during Primal Therapy, people are going back through this logical human part of their brain, through this mammalian brain, like the dogs, they also have emotions and think in symbols. And then we get to this reptilian part where these old needs are stored. And what I found interesting, and I later discovered a lot about this from Gabor Mate, is that when we are having physiological problems like a high blood pressure or a very shallow breath or sweating, any kind of expression from your body, in the book they say that it's coming from this primal part of yourself, but it doesn't speak in symbols, it doesn't speak in words, so it's trying to tell you something, but it doesn't know how to express it in words, so all it can do is just give you a high blood pressure or make you breathe shallow. And I think this was really interesting to learn that there's just a part of us that doesn't really talk any language, but it's just like experiencing life at very basic survival kind of need, but it does have needs, and if you don't listen to it, it's just going to make you listen until you just fall to the ground. And the fifth final point about why he was so much more confident afterwards, and he was also able to give people this confidence and make them do stuff that they thought they weren't able to do, is because he was really empathic, and he was really able to make people feel that they are important, because he knew deep down inside that we are all longing for this, and that we feel that we are not important because people are not caring for us. So one of the examples that they give in his book, his biography, is that one of his friends that wasn't even able to drive, or she didn't have a driving license, he just put her in the driver's seat, and he stick shifted it until they were driving 90 kilometers an hour, and he just put his head in her lap, and that gave her so much confidence because she knew that someone really cared about her, and that made her really feel alive. So this is one of the examples why Steve Jobs was really able to empower people to do the things that they thought they weren't able to do. So the main point of this video is that we have very primal and deep unmet needs inside of us that we are trying to satisfy with symbols like grabbing our phone and feeling liked and loved, and maybe smoking or drinking or other ways of being neurotic. I would leave you with one question, or actually three. What is an unmet need that you have right now? And try to find out what it makes you feel, and what was the first time that you felt this. I know that one of my unmet needs is that you didn't subscribe yet. And if you did, thank you. If you didn't, well, there you go. I will see you in the next video. Oh hey, real quick 7 seconds. If you want to have a minimalist portrait that you're seeing on the screen right now, but of yourself, check the link in the description. I will make 50 of them.